Welcome to the So That's Why podcast, where we unpack the science behind everyday questions. I'm Jen.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Jamie.
Right, today we're getting into something that I can guarantee has happened to at least one of us. Why do we feel tired after eating? You know that feeling you've had lunch, you sit back down at your desk, and 20 minutes later, your eyelids weigh about 10 kilos each, and you can barely remember your own name.
It's the workplace epidemic nobody talks about. You go into lunch as a functioning human being and come out the other side like you've been mildly sedated. I've seen entire meetings derailed by it. Everyone's sitting there nodding along, but nobody's actually processing a single word.
It's even got a proper name, which is postprandial somnolence, but basically a fancy way of saying food coma.
That sounds much more dignified than I need to lie face down on the sofa because I've eaten my lunch. But seriously, there's some brilliant science behind this, and it turns out that your brain has specific neurons whose job it is to keep you awake, and food literally switches them off. On top of that, your gut is producing raw materials for the same hormone that helps you fall asleep at night.
So eating lunch is basically like taking a mild sleeping pill. That explains the 2 p.m. meeting that we've all been through.
And what's interesting is how common and how impactful this is. So research shows the post-lunch dip affects the majority of us in some degree, and it typically hits hardest about 30 minutes to an hour after meals. For some people, it can linger for hours.
And it's not just about comfort. There's a real productivity cost here. If you think about how many people are making decisions, driving, operating equipment in that post-lunch window, understanding what's happening and how to manage it actually matters beyond just feeling a bit groggy.
And that's a really good point. You know, studies have found that cognitive performance measurably drops during the window, and the reaction times slow down, your attention drifts, and your ability to take in new information, it decreases. So if you've ever tried learning something right after lunch and felt like nothing was sticking, well, it was real.
No, you're totally right. And the thing is, this persistent or severe tiredness after meals can sometimes signal something worth paying attention to, like blood sugar regulation issues. So while occasional post-meal drowsiness is completely normal, if it happens heavily after every meal and it really is impacting your day, it's worth trying to understand exactly what's going on.
Which is exactly what we're going to do. So, Chris, when I eat a meal, particularly one with a decent amount of carbohydrates, what's actually happening inside my body to make me feel sleepy?
Okay, so there are actually multiple mechanisms working together here. It's not just one thing. So let's start with what happens when carbohydrates hit your system. When you eat carbs, your blood glucose rises and your pancreas releases insulin to move that glucose into your cells for energy. So far, so normal, right?
Right, that's like standard blood sugar regulation. But the insulin's doing something else too, isn't it?
Exactly, and here's the clever bit. Insulin triggers your muscles to absorb certain amino acids from your blood, specifically a group called large neutral amino acids. And there's another amino acid called tryptophan that competes with these for transport route to the brain. So when insulin clears those competing amino acids out, the tryptophan suddenly has a much easier path across that blood-brain barrier.
And what people probably don't know is that tryptophan is the precursor to serotonin. So once it reaches the brain, it gets converted into serotonin, which influences sleep and wakefulness. And some of that serotonin then becomes melatonin, and that's the hormone that signals your body it's time to sleep.
So your lunchtime pasta is essentially manufacturing sleep hormone. Your body's running a melatonin production line and you didn't know.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. But there's another really important mechanism happening at the same time. Your brain has specific neurons called orexin neurons in an area called the lateral hypothalamus. These neurons are one of your brain's primary stay awake signals, and research has shown that when blood glucose rises after a meal, it actually silences those orexin neurons.
So you've got a double hit. You're increasing the ingredients for sleep hormones while simultaneously turning down the volume on your brain's wakefulness signal, and it's quite a combination to deal with.
It is, and as always, there's more. So after a meal, your body shifts into what's called parasympathetic nervous system mode, often described as rest and digest. So your heart rate slows slightly, your blood pressure drops a touch, and your digestive system ramps up. That whole shift promotes a state of calm and relaxation that naturally overlaps with drowsiness.
That makes sense of something you'll have noticed. It's not just tiredness, it's specific kind of heaviness. You don't feel sleepy the way you do at bedtime. It's more like your whole body downshifts. And it's worse than when you eat. It's worse when you eat a massive meal versus something lighter. The bigger the meal, the harder the shift.
That is exactly right, and there's a reason for that. So for larger calorie-dense meals, like particularly those high in both fat and carbs, the body releases pro-inflammatory cytokines, and these are small signaling proteins, and elevated levels are associated with fatigue and sleepiness. So the bigger and richer the meal, the stronger that response.
Then there's also the role of gut hormones. So when you eat meals high in fat and protein, the gut releases hormones that are satiety signals that tell your brain you're full. But these hormones have also been linked to increased drowsiness.
They have. And so after we eat, our body doesn't rely on just one process to feel full or relaxed. Instead, several systems are working together. Insulin signaling, gut hormones, and even inflammatory signals. And one important piece is that orexin, which is that brain chemical that keeps us awake and alert. So after eating, orexin activity is reduced, which contributes to that sleepy, relaxed post-meal feeling. So the bigger and richer the meal, the stronger that response tends to be.
No wonder we can't keep our eyes open after a big Sunday roast.
Yeah, that's pretty common. But something really important to layer in here is the circadian rhythm. So your body has a natural dip in alertness in the early afternoon, so roughly between 1 and 3 p.m. And this happens regardless of whether you've eaten or not.
Which means for most people, lunchtime actually collides directly with the pre-existing biological dip. But interestingly, research has shown that meals don't actually cause the afternoon slump. They amplify it. And one study found that eating increased the length of an afternoon nap, but it didn't initiate it.
That's interesting because it also showed up in studies of night shift workers. When they ate during their shifts at night, they experienced more tiredness than when they didn't eat. So it's not just an afternoon thing. Eating at any time of day or night can trigger this response. It's just that lunchtime is when it stacks on top of your body's clock.
Yeah, exactly. And what you eat matters enormously. So high glycemic carbs like white bread, white rice, sugary foods, they cause a faster, sharper blood sugar spike, which drives that bigger insulin surge. So more tryptophan entering the brain and a more dramatic orexin shutdown. The whole cascade is amplified in that case.
Whereas meals that combine complex carbs with protein, healthy fats and fibre, they slow down that glucose absorption, and that produces a more gradual response and a less dramatic sleepiness. But it also varies between people too. So some people experience what's called reactive hypoglycemia, where the insulin response overshoots after a high carb meal, driving blood sugar below normal levels. And then that causes fatigue, shakiness and brain fog that goes beyond that typical post-meal drowsiness.
Yeah, totally. And there was a long-standing theory that digestion diverts blood away from the brain to the gut, reducing oxygen supply. That's been partially challenged though, and one study actually found that blood flow to the brain may increase after meals, and the brain is remarkably good actually at protecting its own blood supply. So while blood redistribution does happen during digestion, it's unlikely to be a main driver of that post-meal drowsiness.
Okay, so given all these mechanisms, what can people actually do about it? Because I can imagine most of our listeners can't exactly take a nap after their lunch on a Tuesday, say.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? So the single most impactful thing is the meal composition. So building meals with complex carbohydrates, lean protein, healthy fats and fibre, that will slow down digestion and blunt those blood sugar spikes. So basically swap the white bread for whole grain, add some protein and vegetables, and that alone can make a noticeable difference to how alert you feel afterwards.
And portion size is a big one too. I know people who eat a huge lunch because they've skipped breakfast and then wonder why they've completely wiped out by 2 o'clock. Spreading your intake more evenly through the day means you're not triggering that massive insulin and hormone response all in one go.
And that's a really practical point, actually. So those smaller balanced meals produce a gentler hormone response overall and place less demand on your digestive system.
And here's one that's really well supported, going for a post-meal walk. Even a short, gentle walk after eating, it can improve your blood circulation, stimulate glucose uptake by your muscles, and counteracts that parasympathetic drowsiness. And you don't need to go for a run. Just 10 to 15 minutes of moving around, it can make a big difference.
Loads of cultures build this into their daily routine already. Think of the Italian passeggiata, and the Post did a walk in many Asian countries. We've somehow, in the UK and in Europe, well, in Northern Europe, somehow engineered this out of our day by eating at our desks and going straight back to our computer screens.
I love the way you pronounce that Italian word, which I won't try to do myself, but that was great. Bright light exposure is another one backed by research. So bright white light in the afternoon has been shown to reduce that post-lunch dip and improve alertness. So if you can, get outside or sit near a window after lunch. Natural light helps counteract that circadian dip.
And as always, hydration plays a role as well. If you're dehydrated, that can compound fatigue. So staying hydrated throughout the day, it supports the whole picture too.
And probably worth saying, if you're relying on a big coffee straight after lunch to get through the afternoon, that might work short term, but it can interfere with your sleep later, which just makes the next day's dip worse. It's a cycle that feeds itself if you're not careful.
So what strikes me is how this connects to everything else we've covered on this podcast. Sleep quality, energy levels, even mood. They're all intertwined with how and what we eat.
Absolutely. And if you're not sleeping well, which of course we've explored in detail in the sleep episode, you are more susceptible to that afternoon dip. So poor sleep amplifies the natural circadian low point, so that food coma hits even harder.
And if your diet isn't giving you the right nutrients overall, your energy regulation is compromised before you even go to lunch. The post-meal dip is really just one piece of a much bigger picture when it comes to how you feel throughout the day.
It's a good reminder, isn't it, that these health topics, they're not isolated chapters. How you eat at lunch connects to how you slept last night, which connects to your energy levels for exercise, which connects back to sleep quality, and understanding one piece helps us manage the whole picture.
So why do we actually feel tired after eating?
It's because eating, particularly carbohydrate-rich meals, triggers a cascade of biological responses. Insulin drives tryptophan into your brain, where it's converted to serotonin and melatonin. Rising blood glucose silences your brain's wakefulness neurons. Your nervous system shifts into rest and digest mode. And gut hormones and inflammatory signals all add to that drowsy feeling. Layer on top of that your body's natural afternoon dip, and you've got the perfect recipe for a full-on food coma.
So that's why that 2 p.m. meeting feels like such a struggle, and why a balanced lunch and a short walk afterwards can genuinely change your afternoon. Your body's doing exactly what it's designed to do. The trick is working with it, not against it. That's it for this week. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're unpacking the science behind everyday questions each week, and tell us in the comments what you'd like us to explore. Thanks for geeking out with us. But for now, that's it from me.
That's it from me.
And that's it from me.
Bye for now.